What's up, guys? It's Mr. Huynh with another lesson. Before we start off with factoring out the GCF in a polynomial, getting a lot of personal requests. I will not shave my head. Stop sending me messages. I will not shave my head. All right, let's go ahead and proceed to the lesson. Today's lesson is going to be on factoring the GCF out of a polynomial. Now, it's going to look familiar with the previous day's lesson. It's just that you need to take it a step further for your final answer. So let's just go ahead and start off with number one. So for number one, I have 16p to the fourth plus 4p to the third. Yesterday, we went ahead and we found the GCF, but there was a comma that was separated. So we were just finding the GCF. Now we're going to take that out and show it its full factored form. So we're working backwards. And I'll show you what we mean in terms of working backwards. So let's go ahead and find the GCF for number one. So 16p to the fourth. So when I break that down, that's going to go ahead and be, so let me write this down, 16p to the fourth. So that breaks down. And if you do 16, that's going to be 4 times 4. And then that's going to be 2, 2, 2, and 2. So that's going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And since that's p to the fourth, I'm going to write out 4 p's. Now, same thing. Do the very second term. So 4 times 4, that's going to be simple. So let's go ahead, make that 2 times 2. And it's p to the third, so I'm going to write that out 3 times. So between these two, they have the 2's in common. Right there. Those are the only pairs. And then for the p's, I'm going to go ahead and have only 2 p's in common. So my GCF, when I multiply it, that's going to be 2 times 2 times p times p. So my GCF, when I simplify, that's going to be 4p squared. Now, that's the first step. All right, that's the very first step. Now, moving on after yesterday's lesson, if you can find the GCF, remember the greatest common factor, in your head, mental math, I am totally cool with you skipping this first part. The second part is where I need to see where you're getting the work from. So for number one, my original problem was 16p to the fourth, and then I have plus 4p to the third. Now, what am I going to do with that GCF? I'm going to divide both terms by the GCF. So I'm going to have my GCF of 4p squared, and you can divide the second term by 4p squared. All right, here comes what your final answer should look like. All right, so I'm going to divide it. I'm going to divide the very first fraction. So when I divide it, and if you remember the quotient rule and the exponents section, like probably 2 units ago, is that when you have the same variable on the numerator and the denominator, and you want to combine it into one, you're going to subtract the exponent. So 16 divided by 4, that's going to be 4. And then 4p over 4 squared, well, I'm going to subtract it, so that's going to be p squared. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the second fraction. Well, the 4's are going to cross out, so that's going to be 1. So I'm going to write plus, and then p to the third, and then p to the second. When I go ahead and subtract the exponents, that's going to be p to the first. Now, final part, and this is important because you will get marked down wrong if you don't do this part. After I'm done subtracting, right, I'm going to go ahead, put those into parentheses, and my GCF is going to go on the outside, so which is 4p squared. So in essence, this is going to be my final answer. Okay, make sure you know that that's your final answer. Now, what's the purpose of doing this? Is that way we can go ahead and step it up and be able to factor when we get into quadratic equations. And I mentioned this previously with you guys, which is the U-shape, and it's going to help us find the location of our x-intercepts. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to just practice factoring, all right? So this is your final form. So just a key bit of component is that make sure you go ahead and write the GCF in front of the parentheses, and that whatever you go ahead and divide the GCF by, it's going to go ahead and be inside of the parentheses. If you want to check to see if you did your work correctly, you can apply the distributive property and take the 4p squared and multiply it to the 4p squared, and then take the 4p squared and then multiply it to the p. So basically, if you want to check your work again, multiply these two, and it'll go back to your original problem. All right. So it's pretty simple stuff once you get past the GCF part, but the key thing is making sure you're not just finding a common factor, you're finding the greatest common factor between all of the terms. All right, between all the terms. Let's go ahead and do the very next one. All right, let's try something a little bit more complicated. Let's try 3 terms. Let's go to number 7. Let's go to number 7. So I'm gonna go ahead, write number 7 down, and we're gonna find the GCF between the 3 terms. So I have 4a, 7a squared, and 21a to the third. Now, when you do your GCF, you're going to realize that the largest number you can divide 14 and 21, there's 2 21s by the way, the largest number you can divide 14 and 21 is going to be 7. So here comes my mental math part. So it's going to be 7. And then the last part is you figure out how many a's are there in common. Well, the very first term has 1, this one is going to have 2, and this one's going to have 3. So if you were to write it out, A, that means they only have 1 in common. So that means the GCF is going to be A. So if they all have the same variables, the rule of thumb or the trick is to pull out the one with the lowest exponent, which happens to be a to the first. So now that I have my GCF, I'm going to write down my original problem. So that's going to be 14a plus 21a squared plus 21a to the third. That's my original problem. I'm going to divide all 3 terms, not just 2 this time, because the original problem had 3 terms. I'm going to divide all 3 terms by my GCF. So I'm going to take care of this right now, divide it. So the very first one, this is going to be just 2, because 14 divided by 7 is 2, and the a's are going to cross off, plus 21 divided by 7, that's going to be 3. A to the second, since that's going to be a to the first, that leaves me just with an a. And then the third term, 21 divided by 7, that's going to be 3. And since that's a to the third and that's a to the first right here, that's going to be a to the second. Right? So after you're done dividing, put those into parentheses, and then you're going to go ahead and stick the original GCF, which was 7a. So this is going to be my final answer. Do not use the distributive property, multiply it out, and say that's your final answer. That's your original problem. Your final answer should have the GCF on the outside of the parentheses. All right, let's try another special case. All right, let's try another special case. Let's go on to number 16. All right, let's go on to number 16. So number 16, let's find the GCF. All right, so here we go. For this one right over here, the GCF is going to go ahead and be 10, because 90, 106, let me think about this, 9, 10, 6, yeah. So the largest number you can divide all 3 terms by is going to be 10, right? Now, note one thing, is that this term has an x, this term has an x, but this term does not have an x. So there's no GCF that we can go ahead and pull out that contains a variable. So in this case, it's okay. My GCF is going to be 10. So for number 16, I have negative 90 x to the 5th plus 100x plus 60. Here comes the work. Okay, I need to see you do this on your homework. Divide by 10, divide by 10, divide by 10. So that's going to be negative 9x to the 5th plus 10x plus 6, and then I'm going to wrap whatever I finished dividing by in parentheses, and I'm going to stick my GCF in front of it, and so that's my final answer. So I did a good amount of problems. If you guys need additional help on this, what I suggest you do is wait until Wednesday, and between 9 and 10:25 a.m. If you need my help, if you want me to do some problems with you from the previous day's homework, shoot me a message, and then I'll go ahead and create a Google Meet link, and I'll send it to everybody on Canvas. Highly recommend that you guys ask tons of questions, because Wednesday's lesson is gonna be a pretty challenging one, because it's something that you guys haven't seen before. It's gonna be factoring quadratics, and it's gonna be combining everything that we learned for the last couple of days. All right, guys, take care, stay safe, and I miss you guys. Later.